In the West today, we operate. Well, it's total spectrum warfare, where basically we use real-time communications, satellites, gathering intelligence, downlink directly to the units, to their command units, who then directly interface with the various armored vehicles. And so there's satellite digital connectivity between the tanks, small unit leaders, their command, larger command, intelligence collection, everything. Also focused into this is artificial intelligence assisted planning for real-time solutions. So the intelligence is gathering information about where the Russian forces are, and then artificial intelligence takes over and does predictive analysis on how fast the Russians can react, how best to target the Russians to prevent this reaction, and all that's factored in then to the actions of the unit, so that they are, going out there. And the whole idea here is to get inside the enemy's decision-making cycle, to make the Russians react to what the Ukrainians are doing, and then the Ukrainians keep the Russians off balance. But this is the NATO tactic: to come in, start attacking, full spectrum dominance, total information awareness, artificial intelligence derived operations. And you come in and you go where the enemy isn't. You shoot the gaps. You don't hit where they are. You go where they're not. You get behind, disrupt command and control, penetrate deep. Just total disruption of the battlefield. That's the NATO style of warfare. And this Ukrainian, this strategic reserve, was trained, equipped to do exactly this. And that's what they did. They picked a weak part in the Russian lines. Look, the Russians going to have to take a long, hard look at what the heck's going on here. This is an absolute failure on the part of their Ministry of Defense. Heads need to roll here. There's no excuse for what happened here, none whatsoever. It's one thing for the Russians to say, holy cow, they just came in with a kind of warfare that we're not prepared for. We didn't plan for. Okay. I mean, maybe you should talk to your intelligence officers and ask why that they surprised, but that's different than actual negligence. To have nothing but a bunch of 18-year-olds along, a thinly held line with no depth, no artillery support, nothing, and allow this NATO force to come in and punch through. Heads are going to have to roll. But the Russians have responded. They brought in, among many things, Abdi-Aladanov and his bloodhounds. The bloodhounds, Ahmet Special Forces, 2nd Special Forces Brigade, the 810th Marine Brigade. These are units that Opti is organized, and their job is to hunt down and kill Ukrainians. That's it. So all these Ukrainians are out there using all this fancy equipment and out there moving around and shooting the gaps. They are what we call the prey. They're the rabbits. And Opti is the wolf, the fox, the bloodhound. And he's hunting them down and he's eating them one by one. They're running around there. Opti says these guys are very good. This is a very difficult situation, extremely difficult situation, extremely complicated situation, extremely confusing situation. And what that means is it takes us a little bit more time to kill these guys. But that's what's going to happen to every single one of them. We're going to kill them. Opti says that he has captured this equipment and he's evaluated this equipment, and that's what he's aware of. He's like, holy cow, they changed everything here. The way they communicate, the way they operate. He has their plans. He's interrogating their prisoners. And the NATO full spectrum warfare model is now being evaluated by the Russians, and they're coming up with an immediate response to it. And so the Russians are winning. Kursk was a propaganda exercise. It was designed to go in and seize the Kursk nuclear power plant for the purpose of blackmailing Russia by holding a nuclear power plant hostage. The Ukrainians were hoping to say, if you want to fight over this, it's going to blow up. It's going to be your Chernobyl. We're going to have contaminated areas, or we'll give it back, but you have to give us something back in return. The Ukrainians are trying to create conditions conducive to negotiations. They don't understand that Russia's not negotiating. Putin has taken negotiations off the table, and Russia's in the business right now of doing one thing and one thing only, and that's killing Ukrainians, which they're doing in extremely large numbers. This was also fatal for Ukraine because this is their strategic reserve. This is it. This is the best they got, the best forces. They should have taken these forces down to the Donbass and used them as part of a mobile defense. They could have blunted Russia's offensive operations, maybe bought time while the West comes up with a plan. But instead, they squandered them. The other thing Opti said is, he was always confident that this war was going to end this summer, that Russia was going to defeat the Ukrainians. And that's what's happening in the Donbass right now. The Ukrainian army is just collapsing as we speak. But he said he was always worried about this reserve. He said, where is it? And how are we going to fight it? It's going to exist there, and that's going to cause a problem for it. He said, I thank the Ukrainians because they gave it to us as a gift. They brought them out, and they've given them to us in Kursk, and now we're going to kill them all. And that's reality. They were hoping that the Russians would divert resources away from their offensive. Just the opposite. Russia's been reinforcing success there, and they're dominating. The Kursk offensive, again, make sure we couch it right, was a NATO attack on Russia. A NATO attack on Russia. NATO invaded Russia, and it's going to go down in history as one of the greatest military failures of all time.
Thank you for clarifying this. I want to ask the audience to hit the like, because the more likes, the more YouTube recommends the video, and we do want Scott Ritter to be out there and saying those things. I want to ask you here this, Scott. First and foremost, I don't know, it's hard for me to believe that there was no intel to Russia that such an event will take place. It's hard to believe for me, because I have this image like they know what's going on from every angle. I want to ask you.
Well, let me answer that one real quick. Again,
yeah.
Apti Aladanov, the reason why I quote him a lot is I know him. I consider him my friend. He considers me to be his friend. He doesn't share classified information with me just so the Russian authorities aren't panicked. It's just that I've met him several times. I like the guy, and I trust him. When you meet people, you sort of get a feeling of, are they shady? Are they, holding back? I trust the guy. He's an honest man, probably too honest for his own good sometimes, because he says things that you're just like, oh, do you really want to say that? Like what he said. He said the Ministry of Defense of Russia has lied to everybody. And they lied to themselves, they lied to Putin, and they started believing their own lies. Why wasn't Putin informed of the reality of Kursk? Well, probably because Putin has made a priority the recapture of Donbass. And so he wants to maximize the military resources put there. Now, if you're the governor of Kursk, who I personally hold accountable, I'd love to interview the guy. If you're listening, call me. Don't mind that the FBI is listening, but call me and we'll interview. I'd like to ask you a question. What the hell were you thinking? Kursk borders Ukraine. You know that Russian deep reconnaissance groups come out of the Kursk Oblast, go into Sumy and operate, that this is a region of concern for Ukraine. Why didn't you tour it, inspect your defenses, and consult with military professionals to say, are these defenses sufficient to the task? And if not, then ask for the resources, and that's the problem. Because now you have to go back to the Kremlin and say, I need resources. And the Ministry of Defense is going to turn to the Kremlin and go, well, but all our resources are dedicated to the Donbass. If we give resources to Kursk, then we can't accomplish what we said we could. But then Putin would say, well, are you guys morons? Of course you have to defend Kursk. You can't go off and launch an attack until you've established a solid defense. And when you came to me and I said, how many resources do you need? And you gave me a number, you're telling me now the number that you gave me didn't include Kursk, right? Right? See, they don't want to have that conversation. So the governor in Kursk is either told to turn his blind eye or don't say anything. The Ministry of Defense is telling Putin everything's okay, everything's secure, all's good, and we just give us our resources. Because if you ask for new resources, they have to come from somewhere. And the Ministry of Defense didn't want to admit that they had screwed up, that they had lied to Putin, they had deceived him, because, to go to the boss and say, we need more, that always requires the boss to go, well, why didn't you tell me you need more before? And why do you need more now? And what else aren't you telling me? I mean, that's kind of scrutiny that nobody wants. So Putin was lied to. And Apti is calling it straight out. He said they lied so much and they put us in a really difficult situation. Look, I don't know anything about Russian intelligence, meaning I don't work for them and I don't know what they operate. I knew that Ukraine was getting ready to launch an attack in the Kursk or Belgorod area. I knew that because the Ukrainians are saying they're going to do that. You could even tell what units they were going to use. The Ukrainians were being that transparent. You even knew when they were going to do it. Now, if I know it sitting here in New York, certainly somebody in the Ministry of Defense knew it. I'm sure an intelligence officer was going red in the face saying, we got this buildup here. And the Ministry of Defense said, no, don't worry about it. We've got sufficient resources. Focus on the Donbass, focus on, Volchansk and what we're doing there. Don't bother me with this, until it became a crisis. And now they have to respond. Right now is not the time to lop off heads. People are working, Opti's working, other people are working. They've appointed a new commander to clear this thing up. They are bringing in the resources necessary to seal this off, push them back, destroy. And the resources will be found. But once things are stabilized, heads are going to roll. People are going to get detained. There will be inquiry. This borders on the criminal. What happened? It borders on the criminal.